Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. While many national pollsters and pundits predicted a Democratic blue wave this election cycle, Indiana actually got redder, with the state GOP expanding its supermajority in the state legislature and maintaining control of the Attorney General's office. Reporter Mitch Legan gives us a recap of Tuesday's elections and how it sets the stage for the upcoming legislative session.
And we are going to win 4 more years in that beautiful White House.
The 2020 election was already shaping up to be a barn burner, even before the coronavirus. But when the pandemic hit the U.S. in March, every facet of Americans' lives changed, including the election.
Very quick. I'll tell you the truth, all these people that thought they were being so smart to go out and vote early and they stayed in line for hours, I think I was smarter than them.
The pandemic led to more early voting than ever before. Massive numbers of mail-in ballots delayed the outcome of the presidential race. But the picture in Indiana is much clearer.
And especially in a year like 2020, ain't it good to be a Hoosier?
Governor Eric Holcomb easily won re-election for a second full term, defeating Dr. Woody Myers, a Democrat, and Libertarian Donald Rainwater. Rainwater smashed the state's record for most votes received by a third-party candidate after campaigning that Holcomb had overstepped his constitutional authority in responding to the pandemic.
The one thing that we do know is that the Constitution is there to protect our individual liberties and make those choices for ourselves.
The question for me now is, they've had ballot access for a while. They've shown legitimacy by being on the ballot in a lot of places. Can they capitalize on this sort of showing to develop the resources necessary to make them a viable option in 2022 when we see the next round of elections?
In the state's 9th congressional district, which stretches from Bloomington to the Louisville border, incumbent Republican Representative Trey Hollingsworth also cruised to re-election. In an interview with WTIU News last month, he said the economy was the most important thing to 9th district voters, and outside of Bloomington, many didn't agree with Democrat Andy Ruff's progressive policies.
We've been able to create a little over 10.5 million jobs. We lost 20 million since February, so we're over halfway back. But for so many Hoosiers who are out of work, for so many Hoosiers that feel like their business is not where it needs to be, where it was, I want to make sure that we continue this robust economic recovery and get to those better outcomes as quickly as possible. That's first and foremost.
Republicans actually managed to expand their vice grip on the state General Assembly, dropping a single seat in the Senate, but adding to their House majority.
A strong race by Christina Hale in the 5th District, and Jonathan Weinsappel actually running a strong race as far as Attorney General is concerned. There was reason to think that maybe the Democrats would not get out of the superminority, but pick up a seat or two.
Since 2012, Republicans have maintained a supermajority in the General Assembly. Theoretically, such a setup could mean they have the green light to go hard after conservative priorities. But Downs says former House Speaker Brian Bosma established a moderate pace for getting GOP priorities done, which has helped the Republican Party maintain its dominance.
They could have just flushed everything in right away. That might have actually upset things enough that Democrats would have been able to win some seats back. So now what we have is nearly a decade of Republicans getting pretty much everything they want done, and we're going to see that for at least 2 more years now.
Downs expects Republicans to follow Holcomb's lead on prioritizing economic and workforce development, and, of course, the biennial state budget. And because 2021 comes after a census year, they'll be in charge of redrawing the state's election districts, which they also did in 2010.
One argument would be leave everything exactly the way it is, only make the small modifications that are necessary to have balanced population. But they also may decide to do a few other things. They may decide to look at where are growth patterns.
In Bloomington, after another exhausting campaign cycle, the nonpartisan nonprofit group Braver Angels is working to move past the intense polarization they say has taken over the country's politics. They're hosting a virtual workshop next week on skills for bridging the divide between Democrats and Republicans.
This, I believe, is the #1 problem in our country, because if we can't actually sit down and talk with each other, how can we come up with solutions? How can we solve the problems of our communities without being able to talk to each other?
We won't have official voter turnout data from the state until at least next Friday. According to an expansive Associated Press survey, the #1 issue that drove Hoosiers to the polls this year was, unsurprisingly, the coronavirus, followed by the economy and then health care. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Mitch Legan.